My brother's coach paralyzed him, and Dad married her 6 months later. She took over our house and tried to make me just like him. So I found out what she'd been hiding and pulled an Uno reverse that ruined her life. My brother Ethan used to be the fastest swimmer in the state. Now he won't even look at water without his hands trembling. The injury happened during practice when Veronica, our assistant coach, forced him to try some cutting-edge dive she claimed would shave seconds off his time. Dad was in the bleachers, beaming with pride. He watched his golden boy arc through the air like always, until he didn't. 1 second he was a champion. The next, he was floating face down while the whole team screamed. Doctor said he was lucky to have any sensation below the chest. Lucky, that's what they called it. But when I watch Ethan stare at his useless legs every morning, I don't see luck. I see my brother who lost everything. And then Dad married her. 6 months after the accident, he stood at the altar with a woman who broke his son. Said we needed stability. Said she understood our pain. She moved in with her protein shakes and zero empathy, immediately boxing up all of Ethan's trophies because they were a barrier to recovery. She turned his weight room into a home office and started calling it progress. Ethan didn't fight. He just rolled back to his room and shut the door. I tried bringing him food the first week, but she blocked me. Said he needed tough love. Dad agreed like her words were scripture, even though Ethan was dropping weight by the day. Then she signed me up for the swim team without asking. Said I had potential. Said I'd waste my gift if I didn't train. Dad thought it was a great idea. Said it'd help me stay focused. No one cared that walking into that pool felt like stepping into the crime scene of my brother's life. Veronica became my personal coach, timing my laps, criticizing my form, comparing me to Ethan. Your brother wouldn't have quit, she'd yell whenever I gasped for air. I started wearing Ethan's old team jacket in secret just to feel close to him. Some nights I'd sneak into his room and find him scribbling in a notebook, which he'd slam shut the second I got near. She caught me bringing him food once, made me throw it out, said if he wanted to eat he could come to the table, knowing full well he hadn't left his room in weeks. So I played along, set the table for 4, smiled through dinners where they talked vacation plans like we weren't disintegrating. Then I suggested something that finally made Veronica's mask crack, an adaptive swim meet for injured athletes. The team loved it, especially after 2 more kids quit following injuries from Veronica's training. But when I brought it up at dinner, her fork froze midair and Dad's face drained. She called it patronizing, said she'd already scheduled a training camp that weekend for serious swimmers. I told her Ethan deserved to swim again, even if it looked different now. Dad slammed his fist on the table so hard the glasses jumped, said Ethan got hurt because he lacked discipline. Veronica chimed in, smiling that cold smile, and said Ethan had to accept reality. Then something crashed in Ethan's room. We heard his wheelchair scraping across the floor as he pulled deeper into whatever space he had left. The next day at practice, Veronica announced we'd be learning advanced dive techniques. I knew what was coming. She stepped up and demonstrated the exact maneuver that shattered Ethan's spine. Marcus, who'd been on deck that day, went white. When he tried to leave, she blocked him, said quitters would be reported to scouts. Then she pointed at me. Show them how a real athlete handles fear. I froze on that platform, every cell screaming. All I saw was Ethan's body hitting the water wrong. I climbed down, told her I quit. In the parking lot, Marcus caught up to me, pulled out his phone and showed me everything. Footage of Veronica forcing kids into dangerous drills, injury reports she never filed, emails hiding them from parents. 2 kids had permanent damage, and the families were paid off quietly. Then he showed me her employee history, fired from 2 programs for safety violations. I rushed home to tell Dad everything, but Ethan's door was open, and the notebook he'd hidden for months was gone. I found him in the garage trying to burn it. I grabbed the pages before they turned to ash, and he broke down. Through tears, he told me the truth. The dive Veronica made him do, it was banned. Pulled from competition after causing multiple spinal injuries. He discovered that at a swim camp and confronted her that morning. Said he'd report her. She'd told him to do it 1 more time to prove he was wrong. Then stood there and said nothing while he positioned himself wrong. Let it happen. He stayed quiet because Dad was finally smiling again, because he didn't want to ruin the one thing that still made Dad proud. I stood there in the garage, holding those burned pages while Ethan hyperventilated in his chair. The evidence in my hands felt heavier than concrete. Photos of other injured kids, medical reports with Veronica's signature, training schedules marked with techniques that had been banned for years. My hands shook as I flipped through what remained. Each page another nail in her coffin. The garage door motor whirred to life. Veronica's car pulled into the driveway, her headlights cutting through the smoke still rising from the metal trash can. Ethan grabbed my wrist hard enough to bruise. I shoved the papers inside my jacket and helped him back to his room, both of us moving faster than we had in months. That night at dinner, I pushed food around my plate while Veronica talked about the new season. She mentioned implementing some exciting team-building exercises, her voice bright with fake enthusiasm. Dad nodded along, cutting his steak while she described how much potential this year's swimmers had. Every word felt like code for something darker. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. After dinner, I cornered Dad in his study. The words tumbled out in a rush. The banned techniques, the cover-ups, the other injured kids. His face went from confused to angry as I talked faster, my voice climbing higher. He held up a hand to stop me, told me grief was making me paranoid, said I needed to see someone about these delusions. The door clicked shut between us before I could show him the evidence. The next morning brought a new crisis. Ethan's physical therapist called about insurance approval. They needed documentation of family support and stability. Without it, his sessions would stop. I stared at the forms while Veronica hummed in the kitchen, already dressed for morning practice. The choice felt impossible. Pursue the truth or help my brother walk again. I signed the papers, filled out every form describing our stable, supportive household. Each lie scraped against my throat, but Ethan needed those sessions. Veronica found me at the kitchen table with the completed paperwork. She smiled and patted my shoulder, praising my maturity. Said it showed I was learning to let go of the past and focus on healing. The word tasted like poison in her mouth. 3 days later, everything exploded at once. Ethan's wheelchair motor died during breakfast. Dad got called away for a work emergency, just as the repair service said they couldn't come for hours. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Urgent developments. Needed to meet immediately. I looked between my brother stranded at the table and my phone screen. Made my choice. I spent 2 hours jury-rigging Ethan's chair with duct tape and a power drill, while Marcus's texts grew more frantic. frantic. By the time I got the motor working, he'd stopped responding. When I finally checked my phone, there was one last message. Never mind. Talk to your stepmom. I was wrong about everything. The next week, Veronica had a panic attack during Ethan's medical appointment. Real tears, shaking hands, the works. The nurses rushed to comfort her while she sobbed about how hard it was watching him suffer, how she blamed herself every day. The medical staff ate it up, whispering about what a devoted stepmother she was. Even Ethan seemed moved, reaching out to squeeze her hand. That's when he started defending her. I'd pushed too hard one night, demanding he tell Dad the truth. He turned on me instead, reminded me how Veronica had been there during his darkest moments while I was at school, how she'd held his hand through the worst of the pain, how she understood his loss in a way I couldn't. Each word cut deeper than the last. I found my proof by accident. Veronica had left her coaching certification materials spread across the dining room table. Right there, bookmarked and highlighted, was the Swimming Federation rulebook. The band techniques section was tabbed with sticky notes. My hands itched to grab it, to photograph every page, but touching it would prove I'd been snooping through her things. I pulled out my phone anyway, got 3 photos before the front door opened. Veronica stood there, gym bag over her shoulder, watching me with those cold eyes. She didn't yell, didn't accuse, just walked over and gathered her materials while I stood frozen. At dinner, she mentioned how concerned she was about my obsessive behavior, how violating privacy was a serious sign of instability. Dad agreed I needed boundaries. The family group chat became her weapon after that. Every message I sent got screenshot and reframed. My questions about Ethan's care became evidence of my inability to accept professional medical opinions. My offers to help with transportation proved I didn't trust Veronica's judgment. She built a narrative message by message, and I watched it happen in real time. When I tried contacting the Swimming Federation directly, the school counselor called me in. Veronica had expressed worry about my fixation on past trauma. They'd noticed my declining grades, my isolation from peers. The counselor spoke gently about grief manifesting as conspiracy theories, mentioned that my behavior reminded them of how I'd acted after Grandma died when I'd convinced myself the hospital had made mistakes. Veronica's next move hit harder. She started questioning whether Ethan's therapy was worth the cost, suggested to Dad that they should review treatment options, maybe find more affordable alternatives. As the insurance policyholder, Dad had every right to make those decisions. The threat hung over every interaction. Cooperate or watch Ethan lose his only chance at recovery. I stopped sleeping, started seeing threats everywhere. When I ran into swim team parents at the grocery store, I tried explaining what Veronica had done. The words came out jumbled and desperate. Other shoppers stared as my voice rose, as I grabbed a mother's arm to make her listen. Security escorted me out while whispers followed. Within hours, the school Facebook group had 47 comments about my public breakdown. Marcus's father called that night, told me his son wouldn't be providing any statements, couldn't risk his swimming scholarship over drama and false accusations. I heard Marcus in the background, voice thick with tears, saying he believed me but couldn't lose his future. Another ally gone. Then I caught Veronica in a lie. She'd claimed to be driving to practice when Ethan had called her that morning, but security footage from the pool showed her car already in the lot. It was small, but it was something. I celebrated finding that single inconsistency, felt hope for the first time in weeks. Our neighbor saw me smiling in the driveway, mentioned it to Dad, proof that I wasn't grieving appropriately. The truth hit me during another sleepless night. We were locked in a war where retreat meant destruction. Veronica had made the rules clear: submit to her version of reality or lose everything. I stared at the ceiling, holding those burned notebook pages, and realized I was running out of moves. Every path forward meant sacrifice. Every choice came with a cost I couldn't calculate. But somewhere in another room, my brother sat in his broken chair, still protecting the woman who'd destroyed his life. And I knew, with cold certainty, that this was only the beginning. Veronica started volunteer coaching at Ethan's adaptive sports program the following week. I watched from the parking lot as she wheeled him inside, her hand gentle on his shoulder. Through the window, I saw her kneel beside other injured athletes, demonstrating modified techniques with genuine patience. She quoted Ethan's favorite motivational phrases naturally, as if she'd always known them. The other families gravitated toward her warmth. My stomach churned as I realized she was gathering their stories, their vulnerabilities, building an arsenal of manipulation material disguised as compassion. That evening, Dad asked about the argument we'd had over breakfast. I explained my concerns about Veronica's coaching methods. He relayed his own version of the same conversation, where apparently I'd been screaming accusations while throwing dishes. Both of us believed our memories were accurate. The discrepancy made my head spin. I started recording myself on my phone, needing proof that my version of reality still existed. Catherine, my closest friend since middle school, forwarded me screenshots from our old group chat. There I was, 2 years ago, gushing about Veronica being the best coach our team ever had, praising her dedication, her innovative techniques, her ability to push us beyond our limits. The messages felt like they'd been written by a stranger. Catherine's accompanying text was gentle but clear. She needed Veronica's professional reference for her daughter's special needs swimming program. Another ally neutralized. During Sunday dinner at Dad's sister's house, my 5-year-old cousin Nathan climbed into my lap. He chattered about swimming lessons, then mentioned how Auntie Veronica said I'd been sick with worry lately and wasn't thinking clearly. The words coming from his innocent mouth made them sharper. Even the children were being programmed with her narrative. I discovered the doorbell camera footage by accident while helping Dad troubleshoot the app. There I was, clearly leaving the house immediately after finding Ethan with a burned notebook, not staying to comfort him like I'd claimed. My own memories were becoming unreliable. The timestamp showed I'd abandoned my brother in his moment of crisis. Veronica had been the one to find him, to hold him while he cried. The evidence supported her version of events. The school counselor filed a report about my obsessive accusations affecting family stability. The words potential parental alienation appeared in official documentation. I learned this when Dad's lawyer mentioned it during a consultation about updating insurance policies. The system was documenting my breakdown in real time. Late one night, I used the family computer to search for swimming safety regulations. Ethan's accounts were still logged in, his browser history exposed. The autocomplete revealed his last searches: banned diving techniques, spinal injury swimming accidents, how to report unsafe coaching. The dates aligned with a week before his accident. He'd known. He'd been researching, preparing to act. act. The realization that I could have helped him sooner made me vomit. Veronica's public coaching blog became my obsession. She wrote eloquently about overcoming challenges, learning from setbacks, turning tragedy into growth. Between the lines, I read admissions. Phrases like, "Sometimes we must take risks to achieve greatness," and "Those who aren't willing to push boundaries will never reach their potential." She was confessing in plain sight, wrapped in inspirational language. My therapist received a subpoena. The court wanted records of our sessions, specifically any concerning statements I'd made about my stepmother. I'd been seeing Dr. Chen since Grandma's death, trusting her with my darkest thoughts. Now those private moments would become evidence of my instability. The betrayal felt intentional, orchestrated. I attempted to record a conversation with Veronica about Ethan's care schedule. My phone screen lit up with the recording app notification just as she glanced over. She smiled, cold and knowing, then continued talking about pickup times and therapy appointments as if nothing had happened. Later, Dad lectured me about trust and boundaries. The recording attempt became proof of my paranoia. Ethan's physical therapy schedule created unexpected leverage. Veronica controlled transportation access, deciding whether he made it to appointments. She never explicitly threatened to skip sessions, but the possibility hung between us. I started tracking her movements, noting when she arrived late or took unnecessary detours. Building my own evidence file felt like adopting her tactics. The pool maintenance worker, Jonathan, had been there the day Ethan got hurt. I'd tracked him down, convinced him to talk about the safety protocols that had been ignored. 2 days after our meeting, an anonymous complaint was filed about his work performance. He called me, voice shaking, explaining he had 3 kids and couldn't afford to lose his job. He apologized but said he couldn't help anymore. Another witness silenced. One morning, I noticed Veronica wearing Ethan's old team sweatshirt to bed. Dad's dresser now displayed photos from Ethan's swimming victories, medals arranged like a shrine. She'd absorbed his achievements into their bedroom, claiming his history as part of their shared story. The appropriation felt like grave robbing. Veronica offered a deal. She'd arrange a closure meeting between Ethan and his former teammates if I dropped my accusations. She painted it as therapeutic, a chance for him to reconnect with his swimming family. When I refused, she sighed sadly. Dad heard about it secondhand, how I was selfishly preventing Ethan's healing and social reintegration. My refusal became evidence of my cruelty. I discovered my memory of the accident timing was off by 30 minutes. The trauma had scrambled the sequence, though the events remained accurate. This small discrepancy became Veronica's favorite weapon. If I was wrong about the time, what else had I misremembered? The doubt crept in like poison. During a family meeting about Ethan's care, I realized we'd all been documenting different things. Ethan had been keeping safety concerns in a cloud account I couldn't access. Veronica had been building a case about my mental state. I'd been collecting evidence of her negligence. We were 3 people living in the same house, creating entirely different versions of reality. The evidence painted a complex picture. Ethan had been documenting safety concerns while simultaneously being pressured to help Veronica meet her certification requirements. He'd wanted to protect future swimmers, but also needed her recommendation for college scholarships. The situation wasn't black and white. It was a gray mess of compromises and impossible choices. Dad's sister Catherine faced her own impossible decision. Supporting my truth meant losing access to her grandchildren. Dad had made that clear. She chose family peace over justice, removing my strongest adult ally. Her apologetic hug felt like a goodbye. She whispered about not being able to lose anyone else after losing Mom. I understood, but felt abandoned anyway. I started using Veronica's manipulation tactics without realizing it. Created false urgency to pressure witnesses, manufactured chance encounters to access information. The pool facility manager thought our meeting at the coffee shop was coincidental. I'd actually been waiting there for 2 hours, knowing his routine. Making small talk about family while mentally cataloging every detail he shared about maintenance records felt like wearing someone else's skin. Ethan briefly shared his cloud storage password during a therapy session, thinking I needed it for insurance forms. I had minutes to download everything before Veronica would think to check. My hands shook as files transferred. Photos, documents, training schedules, evidence of his terror in the weeks before the accident, evidence of her systematic pressure, evidence that would destroy our family completely. Kathy, Ethan's ex-girlfriend, emerged with her own agenda. She'd known about his fears before the accident, but had stayed quiet to protect her own swimming career. Now she wanted to clear her conscience without taking real responsibility. Her selective memory served no one but herself. Fighting battles on multiple fronts meant sacrificing my own health. I missed crucial medical appointments, too consumed with gathering evidence to manage my chronic anxiety properly. The medical system marked me as a non-compliant patient, another mark against my credibility. My credit cards maxed out from copying fees and legal consultations. Meanwhile, Veronica used family accounts for household expenses, maintaining financial control. I couldn't even afford to print the evidence I'd gathered. The practical barriers to justice felt intentionally designed. A public confrontation at Ethan's favorite restaurant traumatized the staff who remembered him from happier times. I'd seen Veronica there with Dad, laughing over lunch while Ethan sat at home. My emotional outburst became local gossip. The manager, who'd cheered at Ethan's meets, asked me not to return. Another safe space lost. My part-time job at the bookstore ended when the owner cited excessive personal drama affecting workplace performance. My replacement happened to have connections to Veronica's coaching network. The termination felt orchestrated but unprovable. Income gone, references damaged, future prospects dimming. Couch surfing with friends while Veronica redecorated our family home felt like exile. She removed the remaining traces of Ethan's swimming career, replacing them with generic motivational posters. Each change erased more of who we'd been before she arrived. Dad begged me to let Ethan rest and heal in peace. His words echoed with exhaustion and pain. He accused me of torturing all of us with this obsession. The conversation ended with him asking me not to come home until I could act like family again. The dismissal cut deeper than any argument. My investigation caused Jonathan, the pool maintenance worker, to be suspended pending investigation. His daughter asked why Daddy couldn't work anymore. His wife posted on social media about unfair treatment, bills piling up, stress destroying their marriage. I dragged an innocent family into our war. The collateral damage spread like ripples. The worker's family strained under lost income and community community judgment. They were now associated with our family's drama, marked by proximity to scandal. Local parents whispered about the unstable family making wild accusations. Jonathan's kids faced questions at school about their dad's involvement. I'd poisoned their life by seeking truth. Despite knowing my actions were destroying other families' stability, I couldn't stop pursuing evidence. The addiction to justice overrode empathy. Each small victory required greater sacrifices from innocent bystanders. I was becoming the villain in their stories. My aunt asked the question that shattered my certainty. What if you're wrong about this? The pause before I could answer stretched too long. She noticed my hesitation, saw doubt creep across my face. That moment of uncertainty became another weapon in Veronica's arsenal. Even I wasn't sure anymore. Publicly admitting to past mistakes in family crisis management became necessary to maintain any credibility. I acknowledged overreacting to Grandma's death, seeing conspiracies where none existed. The admission felt like handing Veronica ammunition, but honesty was all I had left. The evidence I'd found revealed my own failures too. I'd missed signs of Ethan's pre-accident distress. He'd tried telling me about his coaching concerns, but I'd been too focused on my own training to really listen. The guilt of that realization. Why didn't I notice he was scared, threatened to drown me? Veronica's lawyer filed an emergency motion, moving family mediation up by 2 months. My potential advocate, a family friend who understood the situation, was out of state for military deployment. The timing felt deliberately calculated to catch me without support. Her motivation emerged through careful observation. Veronica genuinely wanted to be Ethan's real parent figure after years of devotion to the swimming program. She'd never had children of her own, had poured everything into coaching. The accident had broken her too, in ways I was only beginning to understand. The truth was messier than I'd wanted to admit. Veronica showed authentic care for athletes mixed with desperate need for family acceptance after her own childhood abandonment. She wasn't purely evil. She was damaged, seeking belonging through control. Understanding her humanity made fighting her harder. I had to become the manipulative strategist Ethan would hate to achieve any kind of justice. Broke my promise to him about always staying honest. Used people's trust against them. Gathered information through deception. My idealistic self died piece by piece, replaced by a pragmatic truth seeker willing to play dirty. The old me, who believed in fairness and direct confrontation, couldn't survive this fight against systemic protection. Every institution defended Veronica, the coaching establishment, the medical system, even our family structure. Fighting them required becoming like them. Evidence arrived from an unexpected source. Veronica's daughter from a previous relationship, visiting for spring break, mentioned seeing her mother practice the scary dive alone at the pool. The child's innocent comment about mommy getting the splash wrong multiple times revealed Veronica had known the technique's dangers through personal experience. A minor legal victory felt hollow when I witnessed Veronica's genuine tears at Ethan's bedside, both of us crying while he slept, both believing we were protecting him. The shared moment of raw emotion complicated my hatred. We were two people who loved him, expressing it through destruction. Veronica's counter-narrative gained traction with the family mediator. The professional saw a devoted stepmother trying to help her family heal versus an obsessed sibling unable to accept tragedy. My evidence looked like conspiracy theories next to her measured concern. The system's bias toward maintaining family units worked against me. Everything depended on the pool facility manager's willingness to testify about safety protocol violations. He held the key to proving systematic negligence versus isolated accident. But his job, his family's stability, his entire future hung in the balance. I was asking him to sacrifice everything for a truth that might not even bring justice. My past kindness to Veronica's daughter became leverage in the war. The child asked why I was trying to hurt her mom who loved Uncle Ethan so much. Her innocent questions, clearly coached but genuinely felt, made me look like the aggressor. Using a child's affection as a weapon felt particularly cruel. The swimming community split along predictable lines. Those whose jobs depended on coaching solidarity backed Veronica. Those who'd lost children to preventable injuries supported me quietly, afraid to speak publicly. The divide revealed how deeply systemic protection ran through the sport. I discovered the legal system's limitations firsthand. Civil court required different burden of proof than criminal charges. Family disputes needed evidence of immediate danger, not past negligence. The structures designed to protect families also shielded abusers who stayed within certain boundaries. Using Ethan's former teammate connections felt like calling in debts to his memory. We're calling in his marker for friendship, I explained to those who'd loved him. They provided partial support, but wouldn't risk college recruitment opportunities with full testimony. Half-truths from half-allies produced half-justice. The partial help revealed something crucial. Ethan knew about the technique dangers, but stayed to protect other swimmers from similar risks. He'd been documenting violations not for personal vindication, but to prevent future injuries. His sacrifice had been intentional, calculated to save others. The audio file was buried in Ethan's cloud storage, labeled innocuously as Practice Notes March 15th. My hands trembled as I clicked play. Static crackled. Then Veronica's voice filled my earbuds, clear and commanding. She was insisting Ethan perform the dive again despite his protests about feeling unsafe. His voice, younger and stronger than I'd heard in months, explained the technique had been banned. Her response chilled me. She knew, had always known, but winning mattered more than safety. I downloaded everything, creating multiple backups on different drives. The timestamp showed this recording was made 3 days before his accident. 3 days when I could have intervened if I'd paid attention. The weight of that knowledge pressed against my chest. Ethan's browser history revealed more horror. He'd spent his final week researching spinal cord injury statistics, rehabilitation centers, insurance coverage for catastrophic injuries. He'd known what was coming. The searches grew more desperate each night. How to refuse unsafe coaching, reporting coach to Swimming Federation, legal protection for minor athletes. He'd been trapped between protecting his teammates and protecting himself. I realized then what his sacrifice meant. He'd stayed not out of weakness, but strategic calculation. If he'd quit, Veronica would have moved on to the next promising swimmer. By staying, documenting, gathering evidence, he'd created the paper trail that could save others. His paralysis wasn't meaningless. It was the price of protecting every kid who came after. The insurance Insurance documents provided unexpected ammunition. Veronica had filed an amended claim 2 weeks ago, trying to increase coverage for Ethan's ongoing care. Her new statement about the accident circumstances contradicted her original report. The notarized signatures on both documents proved she'd lied under oath, either then or now. Insurance fraud carried real penalties, created real leverage. I organized everything methodically: audio files, browser history, insurance documents, training schedules, witness statements. Each piece alone seemed circumstantial, but together they painted an undeniable picture. I created a timeline, cross-referenced every claim, built a case that even Dad couldn't dismiss as paranoia. The pool facility manager finally agreed to meet after I mentioned the insurance investigation. His maintenance logs from that day showed the diving platforms hadn't been inspected in months. Safety equipment was overdue for replacement. He'd been pressured to falsify inspection dates after the accident. Now, facing potential liability, he chose self-preservation over loyalty to the coaching staff. Insurance investigators moved faster than any other system. They had money at stake, didn't care about family dynamics or coaching politics. When I presented the contradictory claims, they launched their own investigation within days. Their forensic accountants found more discrepancies: equipment purchases that never arrived, safety training sessions that never happened, funds diverted to personal accounts. The mediation date arrived like a storm front. Dad had hired lawyers. Veronica had hired better ones. The conference room felt too small for all our accumulated grievances. I sat across from them, my evidence boxes stacked like ammunition. Ethan waited in the hallway, his presence both weapon and wound. Family members filled the remaining seats, forced to choose sides publicly. The mediator, a tired woman who'd seen too many families destroy themselves, established ground rules: no raised voices, no accusations without evidence, no leaving until resolution. The seating arrangement revealed everything. Dad and Veronica united on one side, me isolated on the other, extended family scattered between loyalty and truth. I presented my case methodically, played the audio recording without commentary, let Ethan's young voice fill the room, showed the browser history, the desperate searches, the evidence of premeditation, displayed the insurance documents side by side, highlighting the contradictions. The pool manager's testimony via video call confirmed the safety violations. Each piece of evidence landed like a physical blow. Veronica's hands shook as the evidence mounted. Her lawyer tried interrupting, objecting to relevance, questioning authenticity. The insurance investigator shut him down, confirming their independent verification of the documents. They'd already flagged the claim for fraud investigation. Criminal charges were possible. The moment of breakdown came when I played the second audio file. Ethan had recorded himself the night before the accident, creating a video diary in case something happened. His face young and terrified on my laptop screen, explaining everything: the banned technique, Veronica's threats about scholarships, his fear for younger teammates. He'd known exactly what would happen, had chosen to go through with it anyway to protect others. Veronica crumbled, not the calculated tears from the medical appointments, but genuine collapse. She rocked in her chair, mumbling about just wanting to win, just wanting to matter, just wanting a family who needed her. Dad reached for her automatically, then froze as the implications hit him. His son had sacrificed himself, and he'd married the woman responsible. The mediator called a recess. In the hallway, family members avoided eye contact. Some whispered apologies for not believing me. Others stayed loyal to Dad, unable to accept the truth even with evidence screaming from every surface. Ethan sat silent in his chair, tears streaming as he heard his own voice predicting his fate. When we reconvened, the insurance company's position was clear. They would pursue fraud charges unless a settlement was reached immediately. Veronica's coaching certification would be revoked. The swimming program faced investigation. Financial restitution was required. The lawyers haggled over numbers while we sat in the wreckage of our family. An expert witness joined by video to authenticate the audio recordings. Voice analysis confirmed authenticity. The diving technique violated 6 different safety protocols. The pattern of injuries at Veronica's previous programs showed clear negligence. Her lawyer stopped objecting, started negotiating damage control. Veronica's breakdown revealed the deeper truth. She spoke in fragments about her own coach, decades ago, who'd pushed her until her shoulders separated, how she'd never swam again, had channeled everything into coaching, how she'd convinced herself that tough love created champions, how Ethan reminded her of herself before the injury. So much potential, so much to lose. She'd been reliving her own trauma through him, perpetuating the cycle. The mediator offered me a choice. I could push for maximum criminal prosecution or accept a rehabilitation-focused resolution. Veronica would lose her coaching certification, but could avoid jail time if she completed intensive therapy and safety training. She'd never work with minors again, but might eventually coach adults under supervision. The decision was mine. I thought about Ethan's sacrifice, his calculated choice to protect others. Destroying Veronica completely wouldn't undo his paralysis, but ensuring she got help while removing her from positions of power, that honored his intent. I chose rehabilitation with strict monitoring. Ethan nodded from his chair, understanding without words. The immediate consequences unfolded quickly. Supervised visitation schedules, mandatory family counseling, financial settlements. The swimming program faced a full investigation. Other families came forward with similar stories. The coaching community split between those demanding accountability and those protecting the status quo. Our local pool implemented new safety protocols, required additional oversight. Dad's world shattered and reformed. He moved out temporarily, needing space to process his complicity. Some family bonds broke permanently. Relatives who'd enabled Veronica's behavior, who'd dismissed my concerns, who'd chosen comfort over truth. Others slowly began healing. Catherine reached out first, admitting she'd known something was wrong but had been too afraid to act. The final mediation session established long-term arrangements. Ethan would receive comprehensive care funding. Veronica faced years of mandated therapy. The Swimming Federation implemented new reporting systems. It wasn't perfect justice. Nothing could give Ethan his legs back, but it was systemic change, the kind he'd sacrificed himself to create. I drove Ethan home in silence, his evidence boxes in the trunk. We'd won, if you could call it that. Veronica was getting help instead of prison. Dad was in therapy instead of denial. The swimming program faced reform instead of lawsuits. Other kids would be protected. It felt like hollow victory until Ethan squeezed my hand. Back home, I helped him inside, and we sat in his room, surrounded by the remnants of who he used to be. The trophies Veronica had boxed up, the team photos she'd hidden. He pulled out a new notebook, showed me pages of plans, adaptive sports programs he wanted to start, safety advocacy work he could do from his chair, ways to transform his sacrifice into lasting change. The truth was messier than I'd imagined when this started. Veronica wasn't pure evil. She was damaged, perpetuating harm she'd experienced. Dad wasn't complicit. He was desperate for happiness after loss. I wasn't a hero. I was a sibling who'd almost lost myself fighting for justice. Ethan wasn't just a victim. He was an intentional sacrifice who'd calculated the cost of saving others. Months later, I enrolled in advocacy training while Ethan launched his safety foundation. Dad slowly rebuilt trust through actions, not words. Veronica served her sentence through community service and therapy. Some relationships never recovered. Others grew stronger through truth. The pool implemented every safety protocol Ethan had researched. Young swimmers trained without fear. His sacrifice meant something. That had to be enough.